theyeshiva.net.
Thank you, Rabbi Gedalia. Welcome, Rabbi Russel. Welcome to everybody. Bruchim Abayim B'Shem Hashem. Those who are here for the first time and those who are, we raise the volume. Okay, is it better? Clear? Okay. So welcome to everybody. So let's get right into it. The topic that Rabbi Russel and myself want to explore with all of you today is the basic issue of the family unit. Even if you follow everything, all of the advice of real experts who are sensitive and empathetic and understand the situation and understand the consequences, and you're doing it all, you do it with Mesiras Nefesh, and you do it with conviction and with commitment and with love, and you have a support system. So you're really doing everything right. Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach. But you have another 6 children, or you have another 8 children, or you have another 2 children. Some families have 1 struggling child, some have a few struggling children. Sometimes there are children who are, so to speak, following in the trajectory that you plan for all the children, and that balance is often extremely difficult, both in terms of yourself, in terms of your spouse, in terms of the children themselves. And then there's the whole other element, which has to do with often that there's very little support. There's a lot of shame, there's stigma, there are neighbors, there's always an uncle who knows better. Some of you are lucky to have mothers who give you perfect advice. Some of you are lucky to have fathers who are clueless. Some of you are lucky to have other people who tell you how wrong you're doing things. Especially when you invite that person for Shabbos. You ever had that? And Sunday morning, your shver or your shviga or somebody else says, I have to have a meeting with you. You know that meeting? And they sit down with you at the meeting, and they look at you, and they tell you how much they care for you. And then they give you unbelievable genius advice. They tell you that you should tell your 17-year-old daughter that in this house, tznius is a requirement. It's like, wow, that deserves a Nobel Prize.
Never thought of that one. Just never occurred to me.
She also never heard it before. So anyway, this is the sugya, as Reb Shimon says, the sugya or the parsha. For those who learn Torah Shabbat, it's the parsha. For those who learn Torah Shabbat Peh, it's the sugya. Whether it's the parsha or the sugya, it's complex that we want to address. So I'm going to open up with a question to Rabbi Russel. And here's the question. This is off? Okay.
He's got one of these. Okay.
But I have one of these. Okay.
Okay.
Keneged Zocher v'keneged Shomer. So the question of Shimon that I would like to raise is the following scenario.
Should we mention that we're going to open up for questions? Yeah.
Yes. Be'ezer Hashem, at the end, towards the end of the program, we're going to open it up for questions. So anybody could share any question you would like. If you want to do it b'ksav, anonymously, that's fine. If you want to raise your hand and speak up, that's perfectly fine. Remember that in this room, you will not find judgmentalism. Because as they say, everybody's in the same boat. So, every story has been heard and experienced and wept with by empathetic people. So you could bring up anything you want, even very extreme and difficult situations. You can also give it in b'ksav if you want on a piece of paper, as you wish. Women and men feel comfortable. So first question, Rabbi Russel, is there's a beautiful Shabbos meal happening in the house, or a Wednesday evening or a Sunday evening dinner. Yankee came home, he had a siddur party, he's excited to share with you what he learned about Avram Avinu. Dvoiri is 7 years old, she's saying a bracha with a lot of geschmack, and she wants to make sure that she did Sfiras HaOmer. last night so she shouldn't forget Sfiras HaOmer. And in walks your teenage son, who's not wearing a yarmulke. And you're afraid. You want to be nice. You want to be welcoming. You know not to say, get out of my house until you put on a yarmulke. You have already exercised that genius piece of advice. You have been around the block. The only reason you ended up here is because you have done a lot of other things and they didn't work, right? If other things would have worked, nobody would have been here. Nobody would go to Shimon, nobody would go to Avi Fishoff. You would do what you think is the right thing. So you have tried it, so you know that doesn't work. But you have all these little kinderlach sitting at dinner, sitting at Shabbos, you're trying to say Advar Torah, sing Zemiris, Kol Makadosh, and you're afraid, you're really afraid. Will these kids grow up and take over their yarmulke? What's the right approach? What are you supposed to do?
That's it? Such a simple question. Okay, so to address this question, we have to come to terms with a basic fundamental principle that you waited far too long to address this question. You cannot wait until your kid walks in and all this beautiful stuff is happening at your table, and it suddenly dawns on you, oh, I have this problem. We're all aware, and we watch, unfortunately, our kids beginning to struggle. So to know how to get to answer that question, we need to build a bit of a binyan. We need to have an approach, a mahalach, that makes sense to us. And once it makes sense to us, la'ani astati, nobody will have that question. It'll be so pashut what you need to do at that moment. To explain this to someone who's never seen this parsha, never been through this parsha, never had a struggling child, it won't make sense how you say what you say. First and foremost, we have to have a relationship with our children, all our children, where we talk to them, where we stop being shy about what's going on in our families. We stop being embarrassed and ashamed and kind of hope no one noticed that Yankee doesn't wear a yarmulke anymore. And somehow we didn't no one's paying attention. Trust me, the kids know before we do. The siblings know before we do what's going on. They all know something's going on. And the pella is that no one told us that we're meant to sit down with our children long before you have that problem at your table and talk to them openly about what you're doing, what the problem is in your home, how you're approaching it, how you're dealing with it, and open up for all your children communication where they feel safe to come and talk to you, and where they will understand when things happen why you took the approach you took. We have to let go of this idiotic approach, forgive me, that we're kind of hoping, they won't notice. We're kind of tolerating him, but pretending to have the same kind of family. I want to say something that I think sits at the basis of all this whole subject. And we have to bring this across in a way that everyone can embrace this. It's difficult to hear what I'm about to say. But I think that we need to hear it and then pause, all of us, just for a moment and let it sit. Let it sit. When you have a child in your home who is in crisis, who's probably almost certainly gone through some sort of traumatic experience, and unfortunately at this stage of their life have rebelled against the fundamental principles of your home, your hashkafas and your values, you need to shift your home to a different style of chinuch. You need to take your whole home somewhere else and recognize that the chances of you somehow maintaining the exact same type of Hasidische, Yeshivische Shtub, with the same values, hashkavas, everything working just the way it did, and do crisis chinuch with this other child, the chances are zero. It's not going to happen. And I think it's really important that we accept that. We let that sink in and understand you're not going to find a clever, happy way to deal with Yankee without the yarmulke, while maintaining everybody else in the exact same way they always were. That does not mean you won't have a beautiful Torah Dika home. It simply means that the style of your home, the way it was, cannot continue. And unless you understand that, there's Pashat no Eitzah. There's nothing to say. I cannot tell you what to do at that table. If what you really think you're meant to be doing is the same, how did you describe it? Yeah, the same parsha sheet, and what was it? You said these beautiful things, the Shir Sa'ima, whatever it is, the same Hislavas may not belong right now at this table. And maybe after the meal, it may be separate, it may be in a different place, but it may not be right now. And can we accept that? See, if we don't embrace what we are setting about here is a sugya of sofik kuch nefesh. We are going to try and save this child's life. Unless we see that, none of this is going to make any sense. The Pasha won't make any sense. That's why we're compromising the other children. The fact is, the compromise is only in timing. The compromise is in the exact surah of what your dairas of your home and your parents and your zayda, the kind of the picture we have in our heads of how we should be running this Shabbos table, this Yontif table. You have to let go of that picture. We can have another picture, a beautiful picture. But you can't have that one once you have a Yankee in your home. And if that's something you can't accept, well, there's very little for us to offer to help you with. Because the attempt to maintain the exact same ruach, hashkafa's values, the same surah, and do this, that's not possible. That's not doable. So people say to us, you should sacrifice this child. All the other children, if the answer is, it's the surah you're sacrificing. You're not sacrificing any children. You're actually giving all your children what they need. And you'll give these too. But it's not that surah. What we need to do, the first thing we need to come to terms with, all of us, is to talk to our other children. And without communication, we're not going to get anywhere. We need to be mugged. I asked Rabbi Leib many, many years ago, I asked Rabbi Leib Steinman, what do you do? This exact question, Grada, I asked him. What do you do? Yankee comes in the middle of your Shabbos Suda, and Yankee walks in and puts a light on, flicks the light in front of you, curses you out, takes his yarmulke if he has one, flicks it across the room, as I got some matzov and storms out the house. What do you do? So Shiva told me, you're meant to gather the other children around, all of them, when he's not there. You don't do it in front of him. That's not nice. It's not kind. But when he's gone, you gather the other children around. You put your arms around them and you say, listen, your brother is struggling. He's hurting. We don't know why. We don't understand it. But he's hurting. He's in pain. We, his family, have a chiyuv to love each other, to love him, to create an environment in our home that's so loving and warm that he'll want to be here. That's our chiyuv. That's our responsibility. So we have to, the first step, I think, I'm trying to answer the question, everything is opinion, you understand? But the first step is communication. Can we come to terms with that, please? Go home and talk to our kids. Sit down with them, explain to them. If you're not sure yet what you're doing, tell them you're not sure yet. If it's happening under your nose, and talk to them. We're getting advice. We're getting guidance. We're not certain. But open communication with your other kids so that when you have to compromise a parsha sheet that's in the middle of happening because Yankee freaks out and can't handle it and it triggers him, they'll understand why. And they'll also understand, I'll do it with you later, don't worry. We'll find time later. Just now isn't the time.
So you're suggesting, if I just may clarify, that a lot of the challenges of many people is the fact that they're not ready to accept a paradigm shift.
That's it.
In their entire marriage and family.
I can tell you it was for us. It was for my wife and I early on. We were still attempting to run the exact same type of home while being tolerant, of the one that was struggling. It didn't occur to us yet that we needed a paradigm shift, not a shift, chas v'shalom, away from Torah mitzvahs, chas v'shalom, but a paradigm shift in how we were expressing our devotion to Torah mitzvahs in a way that could be inclusive and include the struggling kids too. But it's not going to be the classic yeshivish Hasidish home that, with the same tzura. The tzura we would all like of our kids coming dressed in their, I think, matching Shabbos outfits, right? It's got to be matching, right? They should all look the same, that tzura in our sugya is gone. Let it go. There's another tzura. It's a different paradigm. It's just as authentic, by the way, and it can be beautiful and enriching and spiritual and nourishing, but it's not that. It's not that.
There's a beautiful word from the Ishbitzer, the holy Ishbitzer in Mea Shiloach this week, Parshas Kedoshim. It says, Elikei Masecha lo yisasalach. Literally, it means don't make for yourself a molten God. Don't craft God out of metal. So he says, which Meshugana thinks that you're going to make some metal toy and that's going to be God? So he says, Elikei Masecha lo yisasalach is, don't turn God into a particular structure.
Oh.
In other words, sometimes what happens is Yiddishkeit, God becomes synonymous with a tzir. This is what God is. Everything else is antithetical to Yiddishkeit. Sometimes circumstances in life, Reb Shimon is saying, challenge us and elevate us to really become connected to a God that is beyond tzura. Lo yisasa l'chapeso. How do we make images today of Hashem? Nobody bows down to statues anymore, right? As far as I know. I know where I live in Muncie, I don't think anybody bowing down to statues. But we bow down to different types of statues.
Yeah, exactly.
We bow down, okay, that too. But also we bow down to spiritual statues. What Yiddishkeit is supposed to look like. What my child is supposed to look like. Elikei Masecha lo yisasalach. Maybe your shlichus is to have a different type of home. Maybe the Rebbeinu Shalom wants something else. So that takes a lot of humility, doesn't it?
Oh gosh, yes.
It looks like you're talking from experience.
I am confident to believe that with the gifts HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me, I would have been a very big balgaiva, if not for my children. I'll be honest. I think I would have been judgmental and a balgaiva. And it's on the contrary, it was precisely the challenges with my children that helped prevent that. And that's also one of the fundamental issues that we all have to embrace, that this problem that we're dealing with, we have to come at it from a perspective that this is kol kuloi ratzon habayah. We nod our heads, forgive me. And I think we should address this just for a moment if we can. We nod our heads theoretically. I think we all agree. Ein ra yored min hashamayim. Take the Chazal, simple Chazal. Ein odom neikef etzbo milamata. Ela im ken machrizin olav milamala. A person cannot stub his big toe in this world. Ela im ken, unless a malach in Shemayim is machriz, that has to happen. What do we do with that? We sit there as if this whole sugya shouldn't be happening to me. No, in logic, in Torah, I think we all agree the answer has been a Shemayim. What I'm going through, it's not a mistake, it's not an accident. It's Ratzon Abayra, which La'achamer ve'esrim, we will chap. We will chap the whole story. When we get up there, we'll work it out. Why? But if we just keep that external as like a machshava, if that's just, a thought in our heads, but it's not in your nervous system, it's not in your heart, if you don't live that, then when Yankee walks in with that yarmulke and you're trying to do a parsha sheet, trust me, you'll do the wrong thing. You'll feel he took something from you that you were entitled to. Instead of feeling, now, the moment he walks in, I have a different kivun, a different approach to the beautiful Shabbos that we're about to have, or that we're in the middle of. It just changed, that's all. He didn't take something from me. He took me to a different place in how to rejoice and enjoy Shabbos. Again, if we don't see that, what's going to happen is Yankee's going to know extremely well that he is one big fat disappointment to you. One big fat, you're sick of him. He's ruining my Shabbos. And we're going to lose Yankee. Yankee's not in the way. That's mi'ika das Torah from Ashkafas HaTorah. Yankee's not in the way. And I think that's a challenge that we have, all of us, is to not just darshan, but to live. To take these beliefs and accept it fully inside. And by the way, that includes a little, can we call her Leila, doing her parsha sheet? That includes, why is she in your family? Why did they wish to put her there? Has it ever dawned on us that all that mizug of our other children put into this family were also in the Shemayim given to us? What? The Eibishter didn't know what was going to play out? He didn't know that they were going to get exposed to Yankee? Maybe the very way we as parents respond to dealing with Yankee is teaching our other kids something so profound and is precisely what they need for their tikkun, which is why they're in your home. See, that's the paradigm shift. We have a picture as if we got to make this cookie cutter thing, this home, like I say, the Uncle Moshe version of Shabbos, right? No, I mean, it's primitive. Rabbi says primitive. It's great for kids, but we shouldn't actually take that seriously.
What's Uncle Shimon's version of Shabbos?
I'll tell you what Uncle Shimon's version
Which
of Shabbos
song does he do? Hashem is here.
Definitely, for sure. He's there whether it's good or bad the way you want it to be. Hashem is there and Hashem is everywhere, even when Yankee walks in with the yarmulke, and I have to stop with the parsha sheet because it aggravates him. And let Leila know, don't worry, we'll finish it later. Don't worry, we'll do your parsha sheet. And you bring up a topic and a conversation that includes Yankee, that he wants to be there too. And Hashem is with him and with all the others and all the other children. I think it's Mi'ikre and Muna, and anyone who disagrees with this, you come talk to me. But it cannot be the way I see life and the way I believe Chazal express life does, that it's a mistake that all these kids are getting exposed to Yankee right now. That was a mistake. The Eibishter messed up on that one, give you. No, it's ludicrous. Everyone laughs. You should laugh. It's Pasha foolish. Which means maybe the gift to your children, the other children, is watching you as Meirdik, the Haibana parents, loving parents, deal with and embrace Yankee, and they watch and they nourish themselves, their spirits and their neshamas, by watching you, that will come out later in their lives as Meirdik Peiros, that will define their very lives in this world, because they watched how you handled it.
So Reb Shimon, this is all beautiful and very eloquent, but somebody asks, in reality, the older one who left Yiddishkeit already influenced another one. So there's 2 children now who left Yiddishkeit.
Yep.
Does that mean the next 4 are going to leave Judaism? And I should just say, this is a wonderful mission, watching all my children leave. Does one really influence the other? Is that how it's supposed to work? And you say, yeah, that's what it is.
So I say like this. It's another, what I believe. You see, if we had money, if anyone's rich, by the way, please give me a lot of money so I can do research. That I won't take any of money. I just want to do research. Because it is my humble opinion. And if we could do the research, we just need a lot of money to do it properly. There should be Emes-Digger research. You have Yankee. So Yankee has a younger brother, a year and a half younger than him, and it's so posh that he's following in his footsteps. You see what's going on with him. But I believe if we did the research properly, what we would discover is that his brother, for the last 10 years, has been having a problem eating away at the soul of his life, his neshama, distancing him, confusing him, conflicting him. And now that you're, Baruch Hashem, learning crisis chinuch and being tolerant and accepting to save Yankee, this one feels safe to let his sorrows emerge out of him. Yankee didn't cause that. Yankee didn't sit down and give a speech, convincing them. Yankee and your approach with Yankee allowed the next one, if it happens, for his problems and struggles and issues to emerge so that we can deal with that too. And we can help him too.
So we don't have to worry about that influence?
Again, we got the wrong idea here. If you have children in your home who were never traumatized, never experienced any form of trauma, that means they don't have any learning problems, because if you have any learning problems, you will be traumatized. You'll have learning trauma. We've talked about this many times. They don't have sexual trauma. They don't have learning trauma. You as parents are no better or worse than anybody else. That means you're not vicious, mean, horrible people who beat up your kids angrily every day. Right? Your kids are just gesunde, regular learning kids, happy kids, without any form of trauma. Not only will they not be hurt and influenced by Yankee and his process, but you will enhance their lives, the Yiddishkeit, the Torah. They'll probably become mechanchim, therapists, someone like chashuv in the community, helping children because they witnessed how you helped your Yankee and saved his life. Masha'en Kain, all the other struggling kids. For example, I'll give you an example. The most common one I ever see is, unfortunately, lo aleinu, the tragedy, and it's not always the explanation. It's not. There are many, many things. But let's take a classic, simple model where, unfortunately, the older kids in the family are molested. They get molested by neighbors. They get molested in school. They get molested. And unbeknown to anyone in the family, because you never heard of it, and unfortunately, we're still in a culture where we're just now beginning properly to have open education to all parents about prevention of sexual child abuse. It's only beginning now. After 25 years of me talking about this, it's now beginning that schools are having kinusim and educating their parents and warning them and teaching them the signs and how to protect their children from sexual abuse. It's just happening now. Last 2, 3, 4 years. This is it. So what happens in a family where No one ever told you. It was never a mandam, it was never discussed. The question of protection of sexual child it was just something that we didn't talk about in our world. The Nebuch, the older two kids, got molested in school and come home and molest 4 or 5 other kids in the family. Common story. Common story. You end up with 6 kids, 10, out of 10, you end up with 5, 4, 3 who get molested. Yankee then starts struggling because he hit 14, 15, and he starts struggling, and you have to tolerate him, blah, blah, blah. So comes home, we as parents are completely oblivious. We're blind that any of this happened. Utterly blind. No one told us about it. No one cautioned us. We don't know what the signs are. We don't know how to prevent it. We think when your daughter, your 14-year-old daughter is locked in her bedroom a long Shabbos afternoon with her best friend because they're, for the first time ever, learning homework together and they don't want to be bothered by the rest of the kids. No one told you, locked door, because she's worried about the kids coming in? Not true. Hashem Yerachem, what's going on in that room? No one told you this. And you're happy. She's not running around the street. She's learning Shmuel Aleph with her friend. No one told us these things. And before we know it, you got a family where the hidden, painful, traumatic secret of abuse is systemic in the family. Comes along Yankee, he's 15, and he goes off. And then the next one starts going off. And all the poskim, a lot of poskim here, are ready to commit that they know for sure. You see the bad influence Yankee's having on the next one? Do you get it? How absurd that is? How bizarre that is? Yankee didn't affect the next one, and not in the way that we're talking about, because we were tolerant and he dressed that way. The rest are hurting like crazy inside. And as they see parents who are more tolerant and accepting and understanding, or as they get older, they plot, one after the other, they seem to have these problems. And really what you're looking at is systemic molestation. It's nothing to do with the exposure. And if I had the money, I would do the research and I'd prove it. I can tell you anecdotally, just having done the work for 30 years, I can tell you it's a fact. And Haraya, how many times I've spoken where people have come to me, mechanchim, parents and other people, and told me how they grew up in such a home. They had parents just like I described who hung on to their kid and and they became who they are from El Chatayr Yidden, precisely because they modeled themselves on parents who were saving their sibling. We all have that. The exposure alone does not cause kids to go off the derech. It's not true. If a kid is happy, productive, successful, learning well, treated properly by parents, loved, feels loved and cared for and productive, they don't go off. It's a challenge, but they don't go off. And all they need is for us to open up a conversation with them and say to them one day, Shefelan, this must be very hard for you. And they'll cry, and they'll tell you it is hard for them, but there's no shaykhs to going off. But it is hard for them to watch. And again, we have to open up communication with our children to reach inside their struggles and connect with them. We don't do this sugya of crisis chinuch around them. We talk to them. We help them share. We give them language to express their struggles, their issues. But the simplistic notion that the exposure to Yankee alone, when you've got erlicha, loving, caring parents, that suddenly is going to make him go off with no other cause is not true. Except what is happening is that because Yankee is struggling, and maybe because we provided safety, and they see we love him, that they feel more safe and secure to expose what they're struggling with too. Because they dare to believe that we as parents might be interested in helping them. Maybe they feel safe with us finally, that we can actually help them.
So let's leave Yankee alone for a few minutes. Let's go to Matti. So Matti is sitting Monday night at dinner.
Matti's a whole different story.
Yeah. And of course, he's a very sensitive boy, we know.
Yes, we know.
And therefore, he loves the underdog. And every new left-wing policy becomes the new deity. And he's explaining to his 14-year-old sister how real freedom is about expressing yourself through homosexuality, through lesbianism. LGBT is the best thing that ever happened to humanity since who knows when, since the Big Bang. And this poor 14-year-old girl who's struggling with her own identity and her sexual identity suddenly learns that being a lesbian is as dignified and maybe more dignified than not being
I'll leave it to Matti.
And leave it to Matti to explain
right, okay.
how the whole idea of marriage is an institution of bigotry and repression. And look what your parents produced through their marriage. So proof is in the pudding, right? The misery that goes around in this house. And you don't want to argue. You want to give Matti love. You don't want to explain to Matti, that his brain, his amygdala has taken over. One day he'll come to Keshenafshi maybe and learn about his amygdala. So what do you do at that conversation?
Okay, so again,
or somebody told me at his Shabbos table, I don't mean to offend anybody, but this is a family that's very into Israel and all that, and this guy is comparing Israeli soldiers to the SS. Well, I know, unfortunately, there's some religious Jews who do that, but it's repulsive. And this person, he just burst out against his child. He didn't mean to, but he couldn't hear it to call a Jewish kid SS,
Sure.
But that mela doesn't affect them, but we talk about homosexuality and all these types of things. So I'm the father, I'm the mother. What do I say?
So again, everything needs a bissel hakdama to jump in on Matti, as if, to answer that without a framework, it probably won't be very helpful. And here's the framework. I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a very painful story. This goes back some 25 years ago. Probably about 25 years ago. We were at the beginning of our journey. One Erev Shabbos, Friday afternoon, we get a phone call from one of the Shtot Saskonim, who I knew well, in Lakewood, and told me, it doesn't matter what you're doing, but you and your wife need to come over now. That's, by the way, never a pleasant phone call. With our hearts in our hands, we went over to the house. You remember? Do you remember this? I don't remember. No. We went over there, and we were treated to a description about one of our children, and he was just telling us, because he's my friend, how this kid is about to be thrown out of school. If we're smart, if we're wise, we'll get him out of town to some other, city, just get him away from here. A ganze drasha letting us know, that our son had been up to no good things, whatever it wasn't proven, we didn't know, was true, it wasn't true, there was no bezdin, there was no nothing, there was just good old-fashioned, let's call it what it was. But meanwhile, we were threatened and terrified. We were young parents with a young family, and told, this is what's going to happen. Your kid's about to get killed, ruined. Get him out of town. So this is about 25 years ago. We came home. I probably felt like I was dead inside. I didn't know I had an amygdala in those days. But what I did know was that my entire being was shut down. I froze. I went into real freeze. I was as close to dissociating as you could be and still be present. Somehow, like a dead person, I made Kiddush. I must have sounded like a funeral. You know, I was saying, Kel Mali Rachamim, the death of someone. When I get like that, I don't thank God anymore, but when I did, my voice would go low. I could barely get the words out. Vayihir, Vayihivuk, Yemashish. This wasn't a very uplifting Kiddush, I must tell you. I remember going through the meal frozen, couldn't talk, couldn't really make eye contact with anyone. Benched as quickly as I could and went up and went to sleep and just lay there frozen in bed. Somehow I must have pulled myself together next day, you know. But this kind of thing happened to me in those early days before I learned anything about the sugya, how to understand what to do. And I went into this freeze state. So later that week, I remember I was talking with one of my other children who was struggling herself at that time. And I don't know how it happened, but we got into some, which I now know reflectively, I can refer to as an idiotic conversation, where I was giving one of my incredibly meaningful drushes about how amazing Torah mitzvahs is. This is the best life. And I was convincing her to give up her wayward ways with an amazing drusha, almost as good as one of his. That's how good it was. When I finished this drusha, she was silent. And then she said something that killed me and changed my life. Because she said to me, you know, you're giving this drasha, this speech about how amazing Torah mitzvahs is, and it's the best way of life. It's the greatest way of life. And she said to me, I have to be honest with you, it doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like it's really working very well for you. She mentioned that last Friday night and many other times where that kind of thing had happened. She said straight, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to be working well for you. I don't know why you think it should work for me. And she walked off. What was painful about the moment was I knew she was right. I knew she was right. And she killed me with her truth, which she gracefully did many more times during our journey together. But I stumbled across this truth. You know, Winston Churchill, they have this saying from Winston Churchill, that in the course of life, sooner or later, everyone stumbles over the truth. The problem is, most people pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and walk off as if nothing happened. Well, I was determined not to, and I did tremendous amount of soul searching from that moment on, asking myself, if I'm so thrown off in my Yiddishkeit because of the challenges and struggles, then I think I have the wrong relationship to Yiddishkeit. I must have missed something somewhere. In the chinuch, in the education, the yeshivas, whatever I got, I must have missed something somewhere, which I realized over the years I really did miss. We spoke about this when we did that program, about the 3 changes that I felt must be made in the system. Mr. Sashar mentions the Ikar Metzias Ha'adam Ba'olam Hazeh The reason we're here in this world are shleisha dvarim. Na'aseh mitzvahs, do mitzvahs, la'avoid, avodas Hashem. Most people don't even know the third one. It's peladik. The third one is la'amid b'nisayan. To be aimed b'nisayan. Ika metzias ha'adam ba'olam hazeh. Mitzvahs, avodah, and la'amid b'nisayan. And I must tell you, I never heard that before. I read that, Mr. Lashon, many times, but never took it to heart. Never once. On the contrary, I suffered with Sheva Brachas disorder. You know what that is, right? Sheva Brachas disorder. It's where you sit at Sheva Brachas and you believe everything they're saying. Sheva Brachas disorder. Deiris muvarachim. Right, you've been build a binyan adeyat. Wow. I mean, the brachas are beautiful. I have no problem with the brachas. But the picture that's painted is simply never true. I was once sitting with a certain Rosh Yeshiva at the Sheva Brachas. They were doing this stuff. He nudged me and told me, Shimon, get up and say the truth. I said, no, I can't. He said, no, you have to, he said. And I said, I was embarrassed. And suddenly he stood up and clapped and said, Rabbi Shimon's going to speak. So I got up and I said, I'll tell you the truth. You both look like beautiful young people. Nice chosen, nice color. You look like you actually love each other. Did anyone tell you you're going to fight? I said to them, watch the heads of all the married people in this room, because I'm about to describe marriage to you. And I went forth, my usual mahalach, that we all struggle and fight and we work it out and we build it. That's how you build yourself. Aymed b'nisayan. There's no such thing, and never was, a married couple who didn't fight. Everyone goes through their struggles, their fights. That's how we're meant to grow. We're meant to work out how to do that respectfully. Do it lovingly. But no one told us that this world, Ika Metzias Ha'adam, the third of the big three, is Lamed b'nisayan. We should be Aymed b'nisayan. No one told us that. So we're utterly unprepared, and therefore we get terribly tzabrachen when we suffer from Sheva Brachas disorder. We treat that, by the way. If you come, I have a specialty in Sheva Brachas disorder. I can get you over it. So you become realistic about life. Actually, we're doing group therapy on that right now. Right, we can all let it go. If we could get over it, and we could understand that being Aymed b'nisayan is mi'ika metzias ha'adam ba'olam hazeh, that we're going to have very shver nisyanis, that they're going to challenge us and be difficult for us, then we don't get sabrachen when they happen. That means we stay centered. We stay positive. People ask me very often, how come you're always so happy? People ask me, it doesn't make sense. And all these struggling kids, people who know me, you could ask, there are people who know me at this audience for years, many years, and they will attest. Am I right or wrong? Generally speaking, I'm a happy person. Yeah, my wife says, yes, we agree on something. But we have to find that centered, healthy place of being happy and positive, so that when, let's get back to Mati. Mati, was it Mati? Mati is a 15-year-old, brilliant, darshaning Epicurus. Yes? Kivayachal. Where he's holding right now. And he's infecting all the children with this. But guess what the children are really watching? You. Us. And when they see we're not flipping out, we're not freaking out, we're not looking like death warmed up, we're not frozen and bitter and angry, and here's the key. We're not threatened by Mati. And then when we talk to them later, they observed and witnessed that we were not threatened. We were relaxed. Guess what that tells all the children? It tells all the children, don't take it so seriously. There's another side to this. This wasn't the right moment to start up with Moti, so I let it go. Don't think I'm threatened by these ideas. I could fan for it. We'll talk later. You're conveying through your body language, your facial expression, you're conveying to your children, don't take this so seriously. You know why? Because I'm not. Because I'm not. And you have to reach that place where you're not threatened. Because you can't fake such stuff. You can't fake it. You have to really actually not be threatened. And when you reach that place where you're not threatened, and the kids witnessed and observed you were not being threatened, they absorb that. They get strength from that. And later on, if you wish to, it's fascinating. Again, if I had the money for research, if we were able to do that, father and mother, Shabbos table, Mot is darshaning about, whatever it is, and the parents and the kids are watching you. Don't think they're not watching you. Trust me, your children are watching you. And when they see you're relaxed, you're not taking it so seriously, if we would do the research afterwards and ask the kids, how seriously did you take all that? They would say to you, nah, not so seriously. Interesting, but because they learned it from you. And you never had to say a word, not a single word. But it demands that we get to that place where I understand that nisyonos is part of life, and struggles are there, and it's why we're here. And I can actually not be like I was with my daughter when she put me in my place, good and proper, and pointed out Yiddishkeit, your Yiddishkeit, doesn't seem to be working very well for you. We don't want to be in that place. We want to be in a place that regardless of the nisyonos and struggles that get thrown in our face, Yiddishkeit is working actually very well for me. You know why? Because I believe Ein Ra Yored Min HaShamayim. It's all good. It's there for my benefit. I may not understand exactly how, but it's all for me. I'm going to work it out. And when my kids, when I live that, do you understand? Your amygdala doesn't go off like crazy and you don't freak out. You stay real calm and ruhig, and your children will watch that. They will see you and learn more from your silence and your acceptance, and you're not getting reactive, than from any drasha or protection. And what do we do instead? Foolishly, we leap up, censure Mati, cover his mouth. If we had a submachine gun, we'd run after him with a submachine gun, terrified about what he's saying. What do you think that tells our kids? It says that what he's saying is powerful and profound, and we're scared of it. That does far more harm. But I need the money to do the research to prove it.
What do you tell the mother? Whose daughter is really, really dressing close to Adam and Chava before the tree? And her grandmother comes in, or her aunt comes into the house. It's Purim, it's Erev Purim, it's a Sheva Brachas, it's a Vachmach. That grandmother produced 14 kids. There's 300 Eineklach. There's
each one's a Rosh
every other night.
Each one's a Rosh Hashiva.
Yeah, or a founder of Hatzalah.
They all founded Hatzalah.
All of them. And it's just that shame. Or the husband's Rosh Hashiva walks into the house, or walks into shul, or comes into the chasen, and the father feels like averting his gaze from his son. Emotionally, this is not my child. For that moment, there's so much shame for the father or the mother in front of personalities who they respect, who they grew up with, who they look up to, and who are going to judge them, or at least they think they're going to judge them. What would you tell them emotionally?
So I'll tell you what we did. One of our chasnas, a daughter of ours, she had been struggling for a long, long time. She's the one who's not from presently, and probably closer to us than any of our children. Probably the closest. right? The youngest. When she got married, she was married, she's been divorced. She's married and divorced. When she got married, up until then, she was very much not with the program. And close to Chava before the Chet, on many occasions. She's the one that we loved it when she came to the Shabbos meal in a unicorn onesie. Because everything got covered. It was the best thing out. It was great. Her best friend, prior to getting married, was a guy, a homosexual guy, who worked in the local Wawa in Jackson. Am I correct? Saying it right? I don't usually get these things right, but I'm saying it right. Her best friend was a homosexual guy, which we were kind of happy about, because, for obvious reasons. This was like, Ein Ra Yored Min HaShamayim, thank you Hashem. On one occasion, she actually bugged out so badly one Erev Shabbos that she said, that's it, I'm going to him for Shabbos. I'm not sure what that means. I'm going to him for Shabbos, whatever it means. And my wife and I, packed up a whole Shabbos, a Kedem bottle of grape juice, a becher. We gave her some kugel, some food. Do you remember we packed it all up, said, you need food for Shabbos? We sent her off for Shabbos to the homosexual boyfriend. Imagine the hype of the Shabbos they must have had. But she came back Motzi Shabbos, everything was good. We even put a bench in there, showed her where Kiddush was. Am I exaggerating? I said, we put that bench here. Okay. Poetic license. Kitza, at her wedding, the Nidden came up. I have a lot of very nice frum friends who come to our weddings. And I must tell you, in those days, we weren't so open, I don't think, with everyone about what we were going through. But the Nidden came up for my wife and I. What do we do with the homosexual boyfriend? What was his name? I forget his name. Good gesunter guy. And then it was, what do we do with him? All our friends were upon him. I was like connected person. People came. Chaverim, Yedidim. And so we decided, I guess, all her girlfriends knew him. They knew him. He was part of the chevra. So we invited him, because I told her, you're getting married. It's like a Sudas Preda. You can't have a boyfriend and a husband. So you're going to say goodbye, and he should understand that. So we invited him to the wedding, and we sat him on the ladies' side with the girlfriends. But Bekitza, we invited Dylan. It was a Sudas Preda. It was her best friend. And I don't think she ever spoke to him again. I think that was it. I think that was the end. Maybe once or twice, and that was it. But it wasn't like a long-lasting zach. What stops us with this is obvious. Is we're just so darn embarrassed. That's what stops us. Because I'm guessing that everyone in this room, now you're sort of introduced to Christ's chinuch, you understand that what we did was the right move. But to do it, that you have to overcome your ego. That you have to understand you're doing God's work. She is closer to us, as close, Barry, am I right or wrong, as any of our kids. Closest. Every day she wakes up every morning. First thing she does in bed is Zoom or WhatsApp video call my wife, where she's lying in bed or has her coffee. I come up, they're schmoozing every day. They're close like anything. And that was our job. Our job was to keep her close. But we have to overcome that and realize your priority, our God-given priority is our children. We gave birth to them, and we owe them unconditional love, even at the expense of being embarrassed in front of, and I can't tell you, although I don't remember being embarrassed. What? Yeah, no, I don't. That story with her, I don't remember being embarrassed. I remember my ears nearly bursting my eardrums, where at the end of the chasna, they went into some loud rock thing. The chasna turned into some rock concert at the end. And it was like, whoa, no one warned me to bring earplugs. I needed that. But our commitment is our kids, not the neighbors, not the grandmother, not everyone else. We shouldn't be achzarious to them. When they say to us the classic time-honored line, the famous, this in the Hall of Fame of bad lines to say, this is the one most abused. How could you let her do that? How could you let her? As if any of us had any control or power not to, without being a mazik, without destroying her life. We don't let. We live with them in the hope we can repair their attachments, and over years and decades, they will stay with us, return to us, live a life, a meaningful life, by us repairing our attachments with them. And I have to tell you, if it comes to my worry about the Rosh Hashiva walking in or the grandmother, I'm happy to sit down and have a conversation with them later. I'm not mean. I don't ignore them. I offer them a conversation, but just not now. Just not now. Because my priority is my child.
So you feel when the father emotionally disassociates even for 5 minutes from his child because he wants to fit into the Haredi ambiance, he's sacrificing his child on the altar of his ego.
Oh, that is beautifully put.
So
that Avi Fishoff will be sending that around. In fact, you probably received it already. Your phone's going?
Probably sent it already. Well, he usually sends 2 in the morning. Is it
That's
2 in the morning? Sorry, Shabbos.
Oh, my phone. I think it did. Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Is there, somebody says, is there other room, your sister's making a wedding, and your son is going to show up maybe without a yarmulke or maybe in a bathing suit? Your daughter is going to show up, however she's going to show up. Is there room to say, we'll cover the chasana, we'll cover the simcha, Zaydi's going to be this, maybe put on a yarmulke, tayera, tzaddik kol malach elakim.
It's a good thing I didn't have lunch or I'd throw up. Okay. There is no room. Our loyalty is to our child. And if your sister or sister-in-law calls you or your brother, Epis, I don't want to I hope you won't be, belated, but, because of Bobby, it's because of Bobby, right? If she could just come.
Bobby has borderline personality. That's besides the point.
Your answer is, I totally understand, and we'll miss you, and we wish you mazel tov. But we won't be there.
Wow. So the parents themselves should not show up.
Absolutely not. And you tell them gently, I understand, you can't handle it, I got it. It's embarrassing for you. But we won't be there.
Because you want to show your child that they come first.
Absolutely, yes. And I'll tell you something else. I asked the shayla to Rabbanim many times because I told this to people I was working with, and then suddenly someone invokes the time-honored kibbud of v'aim clause and lets you know that you're over on kibbud of v'aim because you have to come. And Bobby needs the picture with all the, Today you can Photoshop in afterwards. Anyway, I said you can Photoshop clothes on her then. What's your problem? What's the big deal? If that's what you want. But they evoke this kibbud of v'aim clause designed to make you destroy your child. I got news for you. In halacha, it has no place. Chayecha Koidman says you take care of your child first. If you're forced into that corner, then gently and respectfully, you reassure yourself that my priority is my child, even at the expense, as gently as you do it, of kibbud av v'em. That's Pashut, a psak halacha I received many, many times. That means we don't be achzarius, we can't be angry, we can't, you don't create a scene, you just share the facts. I'm so sorry we won't be there. It's all of us or none of us. And you need to make up your mind. And if you can't do it, we're fine. We respect that. We respect that. My child is my priority.
It's probably helpful to remember the alternative. You may show up at the wedding, your child will be forced to be in a way they don't want to be, but the result may be somebody cutting their wrist.
Yes, exactly.
Somebody overdosing.
Absolutely. The
So that's what we're
consequences are
dealing with.
horrendous.
We're not just dealing with, we're dealing with pikuach nefesh.
Yes, that's exactly right. We are dealing with koch nefesh. And therefore we side with our child. Always. Under any and all circumstances. Especially when it comes to shame and embarrassment. And we say, so I won't come, it's fine. And that includes Hanukkah parties. That includes where no one officially is allowed to talk about the fact that her uncle molested her. And no one's allowed to say this because he's been struggling his whole life and now he's sort of getting it together and we don't want to destabilize him. We don't mind if your daughter is in a psychiatric unit. That we're okay with. But we don't want to destabilize him. I don't want to get into the lomdas and the inequity of it all.
But there is a woman that her father molested her for years. She doesn't go visit. She can't. And her sisters tell her, Kibbud Av, you're killing mommy and tati by not showing up like the rest of the family. What would be your response to this?
My response would be, sure, please go to mommy and tati and tell them as soon as tati makes amends for what he did, we'll be happy to come. Let him make amends first. Let him make amends. But until he make amends, no, sorry. Sorry.
So just to clarify, the concept that kibbud av v'em comes at the expense of your health and your children's health is a very corrupt concept, isn't it?
Well, when you say, yes, it is. I mean, but often clearly, I mean, if you say to me that my health, I don't want this to be misunderstood. If my health temporarily, I find it difficult because my parents want me to come and move a cabinet for them, a closet to another room, which they can, and it's a bit strenuous, I go do it.
Right.
But what we're saying is like this. If I'm putting myself or my child into a sofik pekuach nefesh, which you would be if you're going to force your child to dress properly, to go to the chasna, especially where they know they're not wanted or respected or loved, the reaction to that is sofik pekuach nefesh. And in such case, you're chayecha kaidmim, and you're potter from kibbud av in that moment.
When is the point that a parent does know that the attachment is good enough or that the child's prefrontals are functioning to the point that you could nicely tell them to do something?
Number one.
How do you know that you went through the chut hasayda?
Yeah. I don't care how well your prefrontal cortex is functioning. We don't tell them to do something. Ever. We don't tell them. I don't tell my kids to do things. And my kids, true or false, are incredibly respectful to me. True or false? I never tell them. I would never tell my kid to empty the garbage. I would ask them, Shefela, do you think you could empty the garbage? If you could, I'd appreciate. If not, don't worry, I'll do it. And I'm more than happy to do it.
What about non-in-crisis chinuch?
In regular chinuch, I do the same thing. I don't tell my kids what to do. That's why they all respect me. I say it truthfully. Am I, Barry, Mommy? Truthful or not? I probably took most of the garbage out of it. He was with us for Yontif. I probably took out most of the garbage. I asked them, but you know who took it out? Momo. His 15-year-old son, my oldest grandson. And what 15-year-old wants to take out garbage? I mean, let's be real. You know, unless you're crazy, what 15-year-old boy is going to schlep from the 4th floor, walk all the way down, and then down the street to the big dumpster?
At what age do you stop telling them to do anything?
I ask them. I never tell them. I always ask them, Shafler, would you mind?
What about a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, time to go to bed?
That's different. I'm not asking them to do something, a favor for me in regular chinuch. I might tell them because they have to. It's bedtime. But by bar mitzvah for sure. Bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah. Over that age, I don't tell my kids ever what to do. I ask them. I talk to them. And guess what? Right or wrong, they more or less are compliant. Includes everything, especially homework. I think homework stinks. Homework is a mazik. It's not as bad as parsha sheets, but it's a mazik. How are we doing?
Great. I think we should open it up to the. We're going to open it up now to the crowd. Anybody can ask any question. Please keep it direct and concise to the point. And go ahead. Stand up and speak loud so everybody can hear, because we're not going to be able to hear.
Or maybe we have a microphone. We can pass a microphone. If anyone wants to ask a question, please, we have a microphone. Oh, here. Hello. Oh.
She asked first, so just let her. She asked first. Closer to your mouth.
The question was about children. You said about children, they're supposed to be in the family. They're supposed to be exposed to the older sibling and, or younger sibling, whatever it is. What about grandchildren? My personal experience, my older son answered Shiloh, my married son, he said he can't bring his children if my son does a Veros in front of him, and that means like not wearing a yarmulke. So I'd like to know about that.
Well, I'd like to speak to his Rav. That's all. Listen, I'd like to speak to his Rav. If the Rav Paskin, I'd like to understand the uniqueness of his story. I understand it at times. The parents, their chayecha koidmim, could well be their children who are of a tender age where they can't understand what's going on. It could well be. I could hear that. I could understand that. But that's a whole different...
The question was that her son, who is frum and is married, doesn't want to bring his children to the house because...
Yeah, I got it. And it happens frequently. I like to talk to them. And I do talk to them frequently. But again, I understand there may be a certain uniqueness for your son and his wife with their children that even in halacha, it could be. It's not so parshat that they have the responsibility to expose their children. For him to develop the hashkafas we're talking about here would take a long time for them to understand it. So it's I don't know the answer to that without speaking to him and his Rav. But I want to reiterate this thing, is we reach our tikkun in this world. We reach our tikkun in one of two ways. We could either elevate ourselves, elevate our Yir Shemayim, work mitzad hatoiv, to work on ourselves, to become the people we have to become, fix our klipus problems, because every neshama, we come back, people say we come back for tikkun neshama, is not exactly accurate. It's we come back for tikkun the klipus on our neshamas. Elokai neshama shenasah to be tahira, we say every morning. But we have to go through. We have two options. We could either take Torah mitzvahs so genuine and serious that we work on it in a way where we refine ourselves, where we understand that tikkun amidas is the basis l'kol Torah kulai, like the Gaon says. We could understand that that's my primary job. where we become as my Yedid Nefesh, Rabbi Schwartz, I don't know if he's here right now, but my Yedid Nefesh always says we need in this door to be the Chazanishniks of Ben Adam L'Chaveroi, not Ben Adam L'Makom, where we're tremendously sensitive and work on Ben Adam L'Chaveroi in our midas. We could do it mitzad tov in a positive way. We could do all the tikkun. And Lu Yitzuya, we don't, for whatever reason. The backup plan is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring us shvera nisyonis, and through those nisyonis we'll have to do that tikkun anyway. One or the other. It would be nice if we could do it the positive way, but in this store, I don't think that's very likely for most of us. But what's meant to happen is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is meant to test us and give us shvera nisyonis, and He does. We're meant to grow from them and work out how to deal with them.
Go ahead. Stand up.
My question was answered already. Thank you.
Okay.
Wow.
Somebody texted in a question.
Yeah,
She says,
Go ahead, you do this one.
my issue is not parents or siblings. My issue is my own husband. He's not ready to embrace our child. And he doesn't recognize that it's his own trauma and his own ego and his own insecurity that's being triggered. So he adds to the chaos instead of diminishing it. I'm a woman alone in the house, not only watching my children struggling, but a husband who was a child himself and completely incapable of realizing how traumatized he is. Any advice you can give me?
What you've described is a incredibly challenging problem that needs a very, very sensitive tipul. If the husband in case here is so traumatized, as the text says, that he's too traumatized to even understand. By the way, I think that's just inappropriate language usage, because my experience has been that in the right way, in the right setting, with the right support and hadracha, we can bring to the attention of someone how their trauma interferes in their lives. It's not easy, but it may be doable, and I would strongly, strongly, strongly encourage this wife not to give up, seeking counsel for herself for how to reach him, I've seen it take years, many, many years, but I've seen it done, where eventually, we get it and we can heal. You support that child and your other children. When we do crisis chinuch, we have committed ourselves to fully support and care for and love our children in such a greater way than any of the hurt that happens to them from the isolation that they experience in the community because they have a struggling sibling. We commit ourselves as parents to either move, you move to a place that's less hostile, that's more accepting, and or you commit yourself to giving of yourself, you and your wife, to give more time, love, effort, involvement, caring, playing with them, talking to them. You commit yourself to more until things can shift. You cannot change the outside, but we can always change the inside. And the inside is the environment of love and support. And I'll say one other heora. We can walk around self-righteous. I did it. That's how I know it's true. We walk around self-righteous, knocking the neighbors, being angry with them. And I promise you, I did it. I did it until I stopped doing it because it ate up too much space inside me. It was hurting me to have such resentment, such anger. But the worst part of it was I saw it began to be picked up by my children and just created more negativity, more reactive negativity. When we as parents, facing this horrible nisayon of being isolated by neighbors, relatives, or friends, but we as parents acknowledge it, look away from it, and we dedicate ourselves more to either moving to another place or to giving of ourselves more to our children, but our children witness us not getting bitter or cynical or angry about it or frightened about it, then the kids pick up that I can deal with this. I can deal with this because they witness us dealing with it. But if, God forbid, we're angry and falling apart because of it, and they hear that, they will not deal with it well at all. I think Barry had a question.
Clarification question. When you said before about talking to the younger siblings about the sibling that's in crisis, what stage does a parent know that a child is ready for that conversation? The younger children are ready for that kind of conversation.
I think it's a very good question, first of all. Thank you.
Thank you.
My honorable and wonderful son-in-law. The answer, of course, the question as it's sat cannot be answered. Because the question of when are they old enough to talk to them, the question is to talk to them about what? So to talk to them about your sexually active 15 or 16-year-old sibling, at 5, they're probably not mature enough for that conversation. To talk to them at that age about why he's not wearing a yarmulke around the house, they might be. So the first thing is to clarify, each question demands a different level of maturity and age. And I think it's a matter of trial and error, that we talk to them. You know, communication, it's very interesting because we're coming to the end, but I started with this and I want to finish with this, and then something else I want to say, if that's okay. But communication is the key. This was the mistake we made in the early years, where on the contrary, everyone kept everything very quiet. You know, you pretend it's not happening in your home. You don't want to talk to the other kids. They shouldn't know. They know. They know more than we know. And by the way, the neighbors do too. And your friends and your relatives. Everybody knows. You know, we think we're high. It's just a joke. But the painful part of that is we let down our little children, our younger children, by not preparing them in advance in a mature and confident way that we're dealing with this. We can deal with this. There's a way to deal with this. We must talk to our children age appropriately, help them understand we're not blind and we're not dumb, and we know what's going on, and we're working with it, and open communication to our children that if you're hurting or confused, my door is always open. My door is always open. Come talk to us. It's crucial. It's absolutely crucial. This whole, framework, I used to say, can I say something like funny? Okay. So I used to say, no, I shouldn't knock the Hungarians. We got any Hungarians in the room? I don't want to. No. Okay. Good. Thank God they're not here so I can say my Hungarian joke. So I used to say, why do Hungarians only have rugs in their houses and not wall-to-wall carpets? The reason is, just in case there's a problem, you need to sweep it under. It doesn't work if there's wall-to-wall carpets. So you need rugs. That we have moved very far from. By the way, some of my best friends are Hungarians. Just so you know. My wife, for example, there's a Hungarian. She's Hungarian. Okay.
Mrs. London.
Go ahead.
Okay, I understand that there is a time when a child is in crisis and there is no asking in the house whether to give into their needs as then needed. For example, if they need a friend over the weekend in order to tolerate whatever is even though they're not keeping Shabbos, or in the moment they need a pet or whatever it is, we condition the family and train them and teach them that this is the need of this child right now and we're here for them. But then comes a time where the healthy children, it takes so long, it takes years, and the healthy children start to feel negated or not seen or not heard, and it hurts their attachment. When is the time, when do we know that it is the time to shift over to asking permission of all the healthy children, to training the kid that before you bring your boyfriend for the weekend, can you ask the kids in the house and see that everyone is ready for it? When is the time for that shift to happen? To reunite the family, sort of.
Okay, so there might or might not be a time. If the dynamics of homes are different, some homes there will be a time because the child in crisis has developed with your help and love, and they become more mature, and you feel you could have these kind of conversations. The time would be for you to go and test the waters. If you really believe your child is there, go talk to them. Take them out and sit with them and explain to them and talk to them and see. If you really feel they might be ready, then I encourage you, take them out for dinner, sit with them and say, listen, if I'm wrong, I'm asking Mechila. If I'm hurting you with this question, help me understand that. But if not, this is a question I feel I must ask you. Wait until take them out and talk to them about it. It absolutely does happen as they get older, that they can have that sensitivity. What are we working for all these years and creating attachments, if not to exploit them at some point? So, you know what I'm saying? That's the whole point. No, I'm serious. So when you get there, just take them out and test it with them first. Okay, does that make sense? And we should all know that. We could do that. That is why we're working so hard on attachments, so we can get to the point we can have an honest conversation. I want to tell you, it works so well that eventually I've had conversations that were so painful and difficult about the lifestyle of some of my kids that they didn't want to talk to me for a while. But they came back afterwards and we made peace and we moved on. Because although I wasn't sure, but I trusted my judgment and we were patient. I said to my wife, be patient. I think it was a good move. Let's see. We still make, the phone calls and we call, and it all healed because we'd worked so hard on attachment that it was painful, but they bounced back because that's the point of working on attachment, is it creates resilience, which is bouncing back.
Let's say a woman or a man was molested or raped. They're calling a school. They have an employee who molested them, and the school says, I don't believe you. What do you do?
I must tell you, I find the question is very painful because the research all shows us that the numbers are so tiny of people who actually make allegations like that aren't true. The preponderance of all the research tells us it is true. So that's horrendous. And quite honestly, I personally have encouraged people to take the school or the Rav or whoever it was, the community askan, take them to a din Torah. Take them to a din Torah. And I listen, if you're going to tell me, which I know you are, and so let's not do the dialogue now, because what people say when I say that to them is, but we can't do that. We've got other kids in the school and the family and shidduchim, and then I have nothing to tell you. I don't know what to say. I'll daven for you. I really will. But I'm begging and hoping and trying to get people to go to a din Torah. There's a mahalach. Take them to a din Torah. That's what the Torah is for. Let them know we will be going to a din Torah. Meanwhile,
you wanted to ask.
So again, this is an interesting question. Conversation. I would start with conversation and exposure to families who have done it. I have a family Do you know Minchas Yitzchak, that road in Yerushalayim? It's a pretty frum street. Would you agree? Pretty frum street, Minchas Yitzchak. And I know a family there that saved their child who has a dog, and the father takes out his grand dog for a walk in the street. We actually have a mug at home that says, "I love my grand dog." We have 2 grand dogs? 3. We have 3 grand dogs.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
Asach nachas.
I actually went to Rav Osher Weiss, Shlita. He's like my Rav, and he's in Yonim. And I told him, I have a problem. He said, "What's the problem?" I said, "The dog loves me." He said, "Why is that a problem?" I said, "They come for Shabbos. They bring the dog, and the dog's all over me. The dog loves me. It just loves me. Can I touch the dog on Shabbos?" And he told me, went through the sugya. He said, "This is not the dog they were talking about in all the Sfarim. This is muktzah. It's not muktzah. You can't pull out. Hey, you have to be careful. Enjoy the dog. Have a nice Shabbos."
Well,
Expose them to There are many families who have had to do it because it was hatzalas nefashos. So there's so many people you can go to, expose them to it. They will see it and understand it, and then move to the edge of town. Okay.
we have another 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Shh.
Just like that? What would be the correct response to a grandchild that asks Babi, Safta, whatever, talking about her own mother?
One second. Who's talking? I'm terrible at this. My wife will attest. Who's talking about what to whom?
Sorry, I wasn't being clear.
No, I lost you. It was me.
The grandchild.
By the way, did everyone else understand what she was talking about? Oh my gosh.
No, the women understood.
What?
The women,
Men?
the men. No, the men are clueless.
No, unbelievable. I feel so validated. Thank you.
Yeah.
Saved my shalom bias.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow.
By sessions, we are in the amygdala level, so we're just trying to survive.
I think I'm in deep trouble beyond the amygdala. Okay, yes, I'm sorry.
Great news for my husband.
Yes, all of us.
So this
Start again.
grandchild-
1 second so I can track you.
Okay.
Let me concentrate.
The grandchild
There's a
is
grandchild.
asking me,
The grandmother.
is asking the grandmother about my child, which is her mother.
Oh, I got it now.
How come she's not doing so-and-so, Shabbos properly, it's Nias, whatever it is? She's asking. She's waiting for me to respond. What's the correct response?
You say Shefela. It's just a lovely question. Did you ask Mummy yet?
We didn't think of that.
Now, in all seriousness, and that was serious, by the way, she may say to you, "I can't ask Mommy. That's why I came to you, Bobby." In which case you have a conversation with her and help her understand. And that's a complicated conversation, but you need to talk to her. Yeah, but the first thing you should honestly ask her is, "Can you talk to Mommy?" And if she can't, I would go to your daughter and say, your daughter came to me. What would you like me to say to her? What would you like me to say? I want to protect your dignity, but your daughter asked. What would you like me to say? We always go back and ask. We're respectful. We're not judgmental. We understand, and we go back and we try and tune it and ask her, "Help me if you could guide me what you'd like me to say." You're welcome.
A mother texted, "My challenge is my child is in terrible emotional pain. He's not ready to acknowledge it. He's blocked off from receiving any form of attachment. He says he's perfect, but his heart is shut down. What is my role? What is my husband's role?"
Love and patience. This sugya, you see, this sugya is not a manipulative sugya. Crisis chinuch isn't a clever intervention that we do that, like achieves a predictable outcome within a predictable timeline. Crisis chinuch, I see Avi is here, twisted parenting. Hey, Avi. You didn't send out the text yet. I said you'd send it by now. You hear the great line? We had a great line here. You should have said this. Unbelievable. But crisis chinuch, twisted parenting, this approach is a way of life. It's a way of life to reconnect. What happens with that, when, how, where, that's a process of its own. You understand? It'll happen in the right time, the right place, the right way. That's not our cheshbon. Our cheshbon is to reattach.
We have time for another one or two questions. Anybody raise their hand? Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
If you really truly believe that your child who is embarrassed to go is really and truly okay because it will draw less attention to them and their struggles if you go. Because if you don't go, it will, so to speak, highlight why not. And more people will be talking about them. When the child asks you, please, please go, I can't deal with it, I can't. But please go, it's likely they actually want you to go because it creates less of a tumult. What you do, if you're wise, is you say, if you're not coming, Shefla, I'm happy not to go. But what you may well discover is they actually do want you to go because it causes less of a problem for them, less highlighting the problem. Okay, but just check in with them. What I've said time and time again, check in with your child. Talk to them compassionately. Tune in.
Okay, I just have continuation to what she asked before.
Stand up.
In continuation to what she asked before, knowing my daughter, if my granddaughter would come to me and ask me something about her mother, and I would tell her, did you ask your mother? And she might, because she's a talkative girl and she's not shy, and she'll go and ask her mother. Her mother will, or on the same note, if I would go and say, by the way, your daughter came to me and asked me about this and this, what should I answer her? Exactly like what you said. She would probably turn around and just get angry at my granddaughter and say, like, why do you go behind my back and talk about me? Or don't you know I do everything right? And just because Bobby does this, Mommy does that, that kind of, you know what I'm saying?
No, I'm so sorry. Did I not say you have to ask her first?
Who?
I'm so sorry.
No.
Let's rerun what I said before for the tape.
Okay.
Okay, you always have to ask Rishus first. Your granddaughter comes to talk to you. Did you speak to Mommy? No, I can't. I couldn't. Is it okay with you that I go speak to Mommy?
Right.
I'll talk to her about it.
Okay.
First, check in with your granddaughter.
No, my granddaughter would say, yeah, you can ask her.
Fine.
She would give me permission.
Then
But
we're
once
now
I go
dealing with
to
the
my
second
daughter,
I got it. Your daughter will blow up at
would
her.
probably,
And next Shabbos, your granddaughter will come and say, Bobby, I need to talk to you about how Mommy reacted. So we're at the
Maybe.
next level.
maybe.
So would you like me to talk to Mommy about how she reacted?
Okay. So what
And
do you
then she'll
think?
say, sure, I'd appreciate it. And then
Okay.
your daughter blows up even more.
Right. Probably.
And you ask for
And she won't
shus
let
from
it
your
come to my
granddaughter.
house or
And you
whatever.
say to your granddaughter, would you like me to give you some skills how to handle that better?
Okay.
Care about her, just tune into her.
Right.
You can't fix the unfixable,
Right.
but you can connect in a loving and kind way and be there with people while they're going through the unfixable.
Right. And by the way, I had a cat until my son got married. In
She got a
Butler Park.
cat and her son got married.
I'm saying he took it with him when he got married.
Okay,
That's
one
why
last
I don't
question.
have it.
Got married?
No, the son got married and
Oh,
took
sorry,
the cat
I have this
with
problem.
him.
I don't follow ladies very well. I'm sorry. I thought the cat got married. I didn't understand.
Okay,
Yeah.
Rabbi
Okay.
Russel is going to give 2 or 3 minutes of closing remarks.
Yeah, close. We'll have more time to talk, hopefully over Shabbos, but all good things come to an end. We have to finish for now. But I just want to read something, to share something with everyone. Together with a client of mine, we wrote a letter. She needed it, this client. She needed to hear this because she was in so much struggle and pain with the difficulties she was dealing with. And she needed to know if this was authentic. And I wrote this letter together with her. I then took it to one of my rabbis, Rabbi shlyt, Yerushalayim, and I asked him if this letter could be authentic. You're going to see in a moment. I'm going to read it to you. Could this letter be authentic? Is there anything wrong about this letter? And he read it carefully. We discussed it a few moments, and he said, no, that's an authentic letter. And I want to read you this letter, because this letter is to everyone in this room. This letter is to you, each one of you. Dear Mr. and Mrs. X, let me make this perfectly clear. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in His infinite wisdom, puts you into this situation. It is not just a bad mistake from Shemayim. This is exactly where you are meant to be right now. It is no different than anything else you are called upon to do as a believing Jew. I unequivocally feel that your chiyuv in this situation is to do everything you can to keep your child close to you, and that you should do so with humility, but in a fearless, unapologetic manner, with full confidence, to the full extent of your ability. Yours truly, a Gadol B'Torah. This is a letter to all of us. This letter we deserve. We need to know that what we've learned in crisis chinuch, twisted parenting, what you've learned, you must do with humility, but in a fearless manner, with full confidence, to keep your child close to you, to keep your child fully loved. That's your letter. I hope everyone has the most amazing Shabbos.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.